All right. So these next few lightning sessions, super informal, but just to give everybody, bring everybody up to speed on some community work and community things that are happening and program work. So the first one is a website wiki working group that we formed. I'm saying back in spring 2023, but it could have been earlier than that. Um, in doing, trying to evaluate documentation, accuracy, make sure all the links weren't broken. Was trolling through the wiki, realizing kind of how much content there is in there. We were gifted, or a brand new Fedora website. If anybody knows the history of Fedora, we were formerly with an organization called Duraspace. Duraspace and Lyricist merged several years ago, and they brought over an old website. It was wrapped up in a Lyricist thing. We were given our own beautiful new website, but a lot of the content was updated or outdated. So, I started the work of trying to, parse through that content on the website and update it. And in doing so, I was like, I can't do this all on my own. Also, I'm not a website administrator. So, this is where I can call on the community. This is a really good opportunity to bring in community involvement and community members that maybe aren't technically inclined, but, have the ability to contribute in some way. So we started this kind of website wiki working group, and our purpose is really to enhance or help with improvements on the wiki or the website. So initially, we're like, we're going to tackle the wiki. And then we started to tackle the wiki and realized that the best way I can describe it is like we had a case of cans that were all full of worms, and every can that we opened had another can of worms inside of it. So we realized that there was a lot of opportunity to really dig in and kind of update some of this stuff. So our focus started, we needed to kind of pare focus down, and we started working on the website initially to make sure that that website appeared as a high level information source for different users coming to look at the community. So we started work there, and kind of deeply realized that there was a lot of things that we needed to update. Our focuses really needed to be on navigation of the website, and then navigation of important things in the wiki, and we would get to the nitty gritty kind of later, and then updating content. So at present, we are a very small group. We haven't met in a while because we were waiting on some support from Lyricist to help us with website things, which they have, graciously provided. So Jennifer Gilbert from National Library of Medicine, Maria Siva from Texas Advanced Computing Center, Scott Prater from University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Tim Shearer from UNC Chapel Hill. We're a small group. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but we are absolutely open to new members coming. I'm going to restart the meetings and the working group again so that we can get some more work done. But so what we have done is we generated some kind of generic profiles of people that we anticipated would be coming to access the website. And the idea here is that the website will serve as this high level information source, and then those that need deeper information, everything will link to the wiki. So we began working the wiki. We reworked the entire wiki menu. I think Scott was the one that exported the menu as it existed, and it was like 40 pages long. So if you expanded all the like drop downs of the Fedora wiki and read through all the menus, there was like 40 pages worth of menu items. So really trying to clean that up, because that can be super overwhelming for somebody trying to come and just get some basic information. And we also started reviewing content on the website homepage. So, just start at the beginning and work through it piece by piece. We're super fortunate in that, like I mentioned, Lyricist has, as our organizational home, provides us this kind of support. So there is a graphic designer on staff at Lyricist that is helping us with any sort of image creation or structural layout on the website, but the content is really our responsibility. So the graphic designer is there to help us make it look nice, but we have to put the content in. And then, there was raised some questions about the UX UI of the website and whether or not we could get some support with that. So there is some investigation going on with the teams at Lyrasis about getting some UX UI support on the website itself that can then help us feed it down into the wiki. So that's ongoing work right now. Like I said, we're open and interested in anybody looking to join us. We will meet, routinely when we were meeting, it was monthly. Obviously flexible, there's not that many of us, but I do plan to restart those meetings coming up, probably not this month. As a program, we have a lot on the go this month, but possibly in October. Ways that you can help. So, Dan and Jared gave a presentation yesterday about how to get involved. But this is another way to get involved from a non-technical side of things. If you're going through the wiki and you find dead, broken links that take you to wrong places, anybody can get a Fedora Wiki account. There is an email address. I think it's info at I don't want to say it out loud because I can't recall it exactly, but you can have access to the wiki to make simple edits like that yourself. If you're changing anything, if you've come across something that's really broken or information that's leading you in the entirely wrong place, I would encourage you to either reach out to myself or any of the committers to let us know that you found something and that you'd like to make a change. But if it's grammar, if it's things that you can easily do, the community can make those updates itself. So, but ways that you can help would be identifying any of those dead or broken links or things that are taking you to the wrong spot. Reviewing any of the content, both on the website and on the wiki for accuracy and relevance. And so what I mean by relevance is like with Fedora 6 out, does it still make sense what's being said there? Things like that. And then bringing outside ideas. So if you're like, hey, there's nowhere on the wiki or the website that talks about this. Tom, you mentioned maybe a gap in some documentation. If you have rough ideas, we can update, that doesn't have to be your sole responsibility. We can make sure it gets updated and put in the right spot. But just bringing it to our attention, that's really how the community is going to build a more robust database of user stories and use case. But yeah, so there's lots of ways to get involved. You can email me, reach out, you can find me on Slack and just say, hey, I'd like to come join. Again, I'll always say, when you come to the meeting, it doesn't sign you up or commit you to joining that working group forever. You can come, listen, be like, hey, I have capacity, in a couple months, but I just wanted to see what's going on. We'll take all kinds. So I think that's all I have in my slides. Yes, that's all I have for wiki website working groups. I don't know if there's any questions about that. I can take them. I'm not sure, but if anybody has any questions or comments, happy to answer. No? All right, cool. Dan, are you around?
Hi. Yep, I'm here.
Awesome.
Okay.
Do you want to give a little update on performance work?
Sure. So, as most of you know, Fedora is at a relatively good place now with Fedora 6. We're at Fedora 6.4. We are mostly collecting small issues that are getting reported on Jira, but those issues seem to be quietening down for now. So as far as we're aware, we're at a fairly stable position. The thing that people don't seem to have much awareness of is how performant is Fedora 6. And given the history of Fedora 4 especially, people are sort of a bit hesitant to move to 6 if they can't prove that it can perform up to the level that they want it to. So what we've tried to do is to create a number of profiles which represent sort of different use cases of using Fedora. And I'm going to go through some of those generic profiles, as we're calling them now, and explain the reasoning behind each of them. So the first is a Fedora instance with many files. For our case, we're going to create this as a flat file layout within Fedora, and just try and test as throwing millions and millions of small to medium-sized files at a flat Fedora layout to see where the maximums exist. For this, we might hit some sort of file system limits, running out of inodes, database limits such as max row counts or index sizes. We might run out of ID generation. We don't know until we try. So these are the answers that we're going to try and document for many files. We will also set out the exact profile of the sizes of files that we're testing with, so that people know that they can adequately mirror that in their own situation. Second is one with many writes. So writing to the same object many times to test the versioning aspects of Fedora. We expect to possibly run into issues with timestamp duplication, possibly complications from threading, and any hardware bottlenecks. This isn't something that I believe has been tested too heavily in the past, so I suspect the answers will be quite interesting. The third is testing large files, so extremely large files in the in the advent of 8K video and scientific sensor data being recorded. Files can easily be in the multi-terabyte regions and upwards. So we're looking at possible file system max file lengths, fixity processing times, limits of HTTP, and how the endpoints can receive massive files over time, socket timeouts that might occur. And then the final profile that we want to look at is very deep structures. So as you know, you can create a hierarchical structure within Fedora. We're going to look at possible limitations of database column length, Java limits on path lengths. Obviously, the URI standard has a limitation as well that's going to limit us to a certain number of characters. And also client length. Clients don't necessarily support the full length of characters either. For example, Apache has a limitation of 8,177 characters, but Chrome has a limitation of 2,048, Edge 2,083, Nginx 4096. These are just some of my initial researches into the various HTTP platforms out there and issues that we may come across. So we're going to document how we're testing, the methodologies we're using, the hardware that we're using. Lyrasis and the project have kindly bought some bare metal hardware, which we've thrown as many terabytes of spinning disk into as possible. I think we have around 60 terabytes to play with initially, 64 gig of RAM, and some SSD as well to test solid state storage. We'll also test within the cloud, and depending on what hardware we can get a hold of, we believe that we may have access to some supercomputing storage and compute hardware as well. So we are documenting all of this. At the moment, there's a working Google Doc that I've been presenting occasionally in the Fedora Tech meetings of the generic profiles. Hasn't been touched in a while, as I've been focusing my efforts more recently on actually building some client tooling in order to perform the tests and generate sort of realistic looking objects. But here's where the community comes in. We would like to know your use cases. There are probably use cases that I've not thought of yet. There are probably people trying to use Fedora in ways that we hadn't really conceived. So if you've got or are aware of any particular use cases that you believe we should be testing as part of this, we would love to hear of those, either now in the Q&As, or if they're a more complex use case. If you want to contact me directly, I'll leave my email in the chat now, or come along to the Slack channel or the weekly tech meetings, which I am at most weeks, and I'm around on Slack most of the time. I think that's everything I've got for you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, David, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, I might have one use case, so just to mention it, or if you already know that you plan to test it, because we run into some issues when trying the reindexing of the OCFL storage. When we just lost the database and then need to reindex, and had some issues when the membership wasn't correctly reconstructed as it was before the losing index. So I just want to ask if you know about some issues in that. I want to investigate more about how it happened and so on. So I will probably contact you later with the details. But
Sure.
Are there any issues which are known about reindexing existing OCFL when you use proxies and membership?
I am not aware of any reindexing issues at the moment. In terms of proxies and membership, I can't see how that would actually be affected, because Fedora is not really aware of those relationships. Are we talking about PCDM memberships and proxies
Yeah,
now?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the issue was that one of the tables wasn't populated after the indexing. So I just
Right.
need to check out if how it happens and what is really missing, because it was too much data to really get a good overview. So I want to test on
Sure.
some small sample, and then I will probably let you know. But I just wanted to know if there is something you are already aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. No, anyone else in the room from the committee team or that might be aware of one, but I certainly haven't come across it myself. I have done a reasonably large re-indexing of around 6 million objects of real life data with, deliverable web deliverable files and several sets of metadata per resource, and I didn't incur any problems there. It was slow, but it did complete within a number of days. I couldn't tell you how off the top of my head. It was into double figures, I think. But I haven't encountered any problems with that. It plodded through and completed successfully eventually. But I'd be interested to hear more about your problem, David. So if you can maybe provide more on email or Slack or
Yeah.
ticket,
I will
that'd be
definitely
great.
contact you. I will test it to provide some to create some logs and everything, and I will provide it with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anything
Any
else?
more questions?
No. All right. Awesome. We can go to our next lightning talk now. If John, there you are. Perfect. Hey, John. I'll just introduce, John is our incoming Fedora governance chair. So he spent a year as chair-elect working alongside Jennifer Gilbert, who I saw in the room. So Jennifer is the outgoing chair of Fedora governance, and John is the incoming chair. So I'm going to pass it off to John now, and he's going to give you an update on the Hyrax Fedora working group that Heather Greer-Klein spoke about yesterday.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. And can everyone see my slides all right?
Yeah, you're good, John.
Okay, thanks. So as Aaron mentioned, my name's John Dunn. I'm from Indiana University, and here to talk about the Hyrax Fedora 6 working group, which Heather did actually talk about a lot of this yesterday for those of you who were here. So I'll be kind of quick just to give a little more information on kind of what the group will actually be doing and how you can engage if you're interested in that, because I'm excited about the Fedora trivia coming up. So hopefully everyone else is as well. So I've been involved in the Fedora community for about 20 years at this point, and also in the Samvera community, and very interested in kind of how these communities continue to bolster each other and work effectively together, both from a community standpoint, technology standpoint. So really excited about about this showcase event, the work that Aaron has done to organize this, and to see such great participation in sharing what everyone is doing with Fedora. So the Hyrax Fedora 6 working group is a working group within the structure of the Samvera community. Samvera has kind of a formal structure for instantiating interest groups and working groups around particular work areas and topics, and this is one of them. And I'll step back just a little bit for those who weren't here for Heather's presentation yesterday. So Hyrax, if you're not familiar with Hyrax, Hyrax is a product of the Samvera community. That's an open source Ruby on Rails a toolkit that enables institutions to instantiate or build repository web applications on top of backend and indexing services. And it provides a lot of the user interface features in repository in terms of deposit, in terms of searching, browsing, viewing, intended to support use cases around both digital collections, digital special collections, archival collections, as well as institutional repositories. So repositories of research, publications, presentations, research data, et cetera. And Hyrax is used extensively by many different institutions and organizations for a variety of different repository applications, some of which are more kind of generic and use Hyrax more or less as is, others that are much more customized applications serving particular institutional needs and use cases. And I've stolen a couple of diagrams from Heather's presentation yesterday here, but Hyrax sits on top of a set of core components that are also maintained by the Samvera community, which in turn sits on a data store backend. And you can see this diagram says Fedora, Solr, Valkyrie, Postgres, et cetera. To date, Hyrax has required Fedora as that backend data store along with Solr to enable some basic search and lookup functionality. And specifically, Hyrax has worked on Fedora 4 for many years. And so most instances of Hyrax in the wild run on Fedora 4 as that backend data store or persistence layer. And I mentioned there are lots of different implementations of Hyrax out there. And one of those implementations, which in turn is used by a number of different institutions and organizations, is Haiku, which is a multi-tenant repository, kind of out-of-the-box repository application that is built on Hyrax that provides some additional functionality, including multi-tenancy. And that's used by a number of different institutions and consortia and service providers for repository services. And it, in turn, typically runs on Fedora 4 in current installations. So there has been a lot of work over the last, gosh, I'm not sure how many years, 4 or 5 years, in the Samvera community to look at how Samvera can perform better and interoperate with different persistence layers. So getting beyond Fedora 4 as the persistence layer. And from that work emerged something called Valkyrie that Heather talked about a bit yesterday, which is a data mapper library that is really the future new kind of persistence layer for Samvera applications, replacing something known as active Fedora, which has been that interface between Samvera applications, including Hyrax and Fedora 4. So Valkyrie, unlike active Fedora, has the ability to talk to lots of different backends in turn. So it has this concept of swappable backends via adapters, so that one could have an instance of Hyrax or another Samvera repository that runs on Fedora 4, that runs on Fedora 5, Fedora 6, Postgres, other entirely different backends, and even multiple backends for particular use cases. So Valkyrie has been around for a while, and there are connectors to Postgres and actually Fedora 5 out there for Valkyrie. But Hyrax, until now, has still used active Fedora and Fedora 4 as its backend. But there's been a concerted effort this year to really get over the hump of getting Hyrax working fully with Valkyrie. And so Hyrax 5.0 is the first version of Hyrax that uses Valkyrie by default, and out of the box, that's on Postgres. It was developed by a couple of different development initiatives this year, one of which was funded by community contributions from Samvera partners and other interested parties. And then another round of work going on right now that has been supported directly through developer contributions from some institutions in the Samvera community. And this has led to release candidate 1 of Hyrax 5.0.0 coming out just a few weeks ago on August 28th. There's a test instance of that up at pg.newrax.samvera.org This is running on Postgres, though, just to be clear. It is ready more or less for kind of new implementations, and work's still ongoing about migration from Hyrax on Fedora 4 to Hyrax on Valkyrie on Postgres. But within the Samvera community, there are a number of us who are also interested in continuing to be able to use Hyrax with Fedora and getting some of the additional value that Fedora can provide, including OCFL and transparency of underlying storage. And so a number of partners and other users of Samvera partners and other users of Hyrax have come together recently to propose a Hyrax Fedora 6 working group. The goal of this group is really to do the initial planning and scoping around the development work that's necessary to support Hyrax on Fedora 6 via Valkyrie, building on the existing Valkyrie connector for Fedora 5, Fedora 6 being more or less API compatible with Fedora 5. That should provide a good starting point, but this group has a charge to really figure out what infrastructure is needed in terms of test instance, kind of build and testing infrastructure, et cetera. Define a scope of what would be in an initial round of development for Hyrax on Fedora 6. Is it just getting Hyrax working on Fedora 6 at a basic level? Does it also include some migration components, et cetera, and looking at migration paths, and then creating a plan for that work and what it's going to require in terms of resources. And then we can look at, is this something that's going to require that we seek out developer contributions from the Samvera community? Is it something that's going to lend itself to financial contributions and working with a contractor to do development, at least part of the development? And so this goal of this group is really to do that initial planning and scoping so that we can move as quickly as possible to that next step of implementation. So the membership right now, so I said this group was proposed. The group has been accepted by the Samvera community now. The membership includes the Hyrax technical lead, Daniel Pierce, here at Indiana, who is partially funded by Samvera, the Hyrax product owner, Rebecca Cuddy at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Dan Field is participating as our Fedora expert. And then we have members who have committed their time from Emory, Indiana, Software Services by Scientist.com, also known as SoftServe, formerly Notch 8, UNC Chapel Hill. And we welcome additional members. You don't have to be developers, could be product owners for repository services, service owners, metadata experts, people who are willing to do testing and validation work. So if you are interested in joining us, we are having our first meeting in just a few weeks on Monday, September 25th. If you Google, there's a tiny URL here, but also if I can put a link in the chat to the wiki page for the group that has the charter for the group, has the current membership and a link to the agenda for that first meeting. So thanks very much for letting me talk a little bit about this initiative, and happy to answer any questions either here or offline.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John? Yeah. So I mean, if you want to, if you do have additional questions about the working group or want to follow along with the working group, we'll share everything. Obviously, we're working collaboratively. We'll share everything with the Fedora community as it comes out of that working group. But I would say the majority of the communication about meeting times and whatnot will come from the Samvera community directly, and then we'll share it via the Fedora community. So that's kind of how that process.
One thing I forgot to mention is I should call out that a lot of the early work in kind of exploring this is being done right now by Emory. And so after the break, after the noon Eastern break, Emily Porter and her colleagues will be talking about their work to date on looking at Samvera and Fedora 6. So
yes,
if you're interested in this topic,
yeah, exactly.
Definitely tune in for that.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.